Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel Biodiversity and Conservation. I am Subbalakshmi Rao from Ambika Prasad Research Foundation, India, and we are continuing our UGC NET examination series for environmental science subject, and this is 31st part of Unit 3 Environmental Biology. And today we are going to discuss about one of the biogeochemical cycles, and this is sulfur cycle, which is a sedimentary cycle of biogeochemical cycle. um, and let's start. The sulfur cycle is a biogeochemical cycle in which the sulfur moves between rocks, water bodies, and living systems. And it is important in our day-to-day study that we should know about what is the importance of sulfur, because it affects many minerals, and in life also it has a major role because sulfur is an essential element, and it is a part of many proteins and cofactors. And sulfur compounds can be used as oxidants or reductants in microbial respiration, also in the biological processes. And the global sulfur cycle, which we are studying, involves the transformation of sulfur species through different oxidation states, which play an important role in both geological and biological processes. There are different oxidation states of sulfur, starting from +6 to -4. Mm, there is a state of um, neutral also, where the sulfur has zero charge on it. Um, Now, what is sulfur? Sulfur is one of the most abundant elements on the earth. Its appearance is yellow, it's brittle, it's tasteless, odorless, and it's a non-metal. And sulfur is present in all kinds of proteins. Plants directly absorb sulfur containing amino acids such as methionine, cysteine, and cysteine. And sulfur is released into the atmosphere by burning of fossil fuels, some volcanic activities, and decomposition of organic molecules. And on land, sulfur is stored in underground rocks, as it is said that it's a sedimentary cycle. So the most of the sulfur is actually stored as rocks in the underground, and it is released by precipitation or weathering of rocks or other geothermal vents and other processes, which disturbs the tectonic plates of Earth, releasing the sulfur into the atmosphere. Now there are some steps, mainly 5 steps of sulfur cycle, like mineralization of organic sulfur into inorganic forms, and such as hydrogen sulfide, elemental sulfur, as well as sulfide minerals. Oxidation of hydrogen sulfide, sulfide, and elemental sulfur into sulfate, and production of sulfate to sulfide. Next step is incorporation of sulfide into organic compounds. And last step is disproportionation of sulfur compounds into sulfate and hydrogen sulfide. So basically, um, here the steps give us the summary. Um, the first, decomposition of organic compounds, like protein degradation occurs, which releases amino acids that can contain sulfur. Then the sulfates are reduced to H2S by the action of certain bacteria like desulfotomaculum, then oxidation of hydrogen sulfide to elemental sulfur. Hydrogen sulfide then oxidizes to produce elemental sulfur, and um, actually then the elemental sulfur present in the soil cannot be utilized directly by the plants. Therefore, it is converted into sulfates by chemolithotropic bacteria. Then reduction of sulfates into hydrogen sulfide by desulfovibrio desulfuricans bacteria. Then this occurs in two steps. Firstly, that the sulfates are converted to sulfites using ATP, and in the next step there is reduction of sulfide to hydrogen sulfide, and so there are some bacteria that help in this process of sulfur cycle. Next we'll go about discussing the process of sulfur cycle. First, when the sulfur is released by the weathering of rocks, the sulfur comes in contact with air and is converted into sulfates. Sulfates are then taken up by the plants and microbes and are converted into organic forms. And the organic form of sulfur is then consumed by the animals through their food, and thus sulfur moves in the food chain. And when the animals die, some of the sulfur is released by decomposition, while some enter the tissues of microbes. There are several natural sources also, like volcanic eruptions, evaporation of water, and breakdown of organic matter in swamps that release sulfur directly into the atmosphere. This sulfur that falls on the earth through rainfall, and then the cycle continues. Here it is a picture depicting the sulfur cycle. Here the sulfur first are reduced to S2 minus through the help of sulfur reducers, which are animal, plant, heterotrophic bacteria. Then S2 minus um, combines with the water molecules or hydrogen present in the atmosphere into H2S, that is hydrogen sulfide, and enters into the atmosphere, and through precipitation the S2 minus comes to the soil, forming metal sulfur. Then S2 minus is reduced into S or sulfates. So S2 minus is reduced to S through sulfur reducing bacteria, and S2 minus is converted into sulfates via chemical oxidation, and as sulfur is also directly converted to sulfates through autotrophic bacteria, and when the there is runoff of water or the weathering of rock takes place, the sulfates are released into the atmosphere, or when fertilizers are used or industrial discharges are done, then sulfates are then produced, which are used by plant, animal to convert them into sulfur ions. Then the cycle continues. Here we will discuss about the sources and sinks of sulfur, like from where sulfur actually comes, and where it is stored. So the sulfur is actually found in oxidation states ranging from +6 in sulfates to -2 in sulfides. Sorry, I have said wrong in the previous slide that -4 is the oxidation state. It's actually till -2 only. And thus the elemental sulfur can either give or receive electrons depending on its environment. So in the early earth, most of the sulfur was present in minerals such as pyrite, that is FeS2. And over the earth's history, the amount of freely moving sulfur increased through volcanic activities, as well as the weathering of the crust in an oxygenated atmosphere. So the Earth's main sulfur sink is oceans, where sulfate is a major oxidizing agent. When sulfate is assimilated or absorbed by the organisms, it is reduced and converted to organic sulfur, which is an essential component of proteins. However, the biosphere does not act as a major sink for sulfur. Instead, the majority of sulfur is found in seawater or sedimentary rocks like pyrite-rich shales, evaporite rocks, and calcium and magnesium carbonates. So, so maybe there is more processes going on inside the body of the organisms using sulfur. So maybe biosphere has a major bulk of sulfur within it, but the actual or main sulfur sink is oceans because of the deposition of sulfur in the oceans, leading to rock formation, mainly sedimentary rock formation. So we can find many. um Actually, the base of the earth is only rocks. So ocean base also has so many rocks. That means the main thing logically is oceans for sulfur. The amount of sulfur in oceans is controlled by three major processes, like input from rivers, sulfate reduction, and sulfide reoxidation on continental shelves and slopes, burial of anhydrite and pyrite in the oceanic crust. So these processes help to control the amount of sulfate in the oceans. And the primary natural source of sulfur to the atmosphere is sea spray or wind-blown sulfur-rich dust, which does not live in the atmosphere for a long time. But due to our activities, the large input of sulfur from burning of coal and other fossil fuels into the atmosphere has added a substantial amount of sulfur dioxide to the atmosphere, which acts as the air pollutant, thus causing severe changes in climate. And other processes are also hampered, like global warming is is a major concern nowadays, where sulfur dioxide also plays an important role in heating up the atmosphere, thereby causing global warming. So here we will discuss about the impact of human activities on the sulfur cycle. As the first line gives away, that human activities have a major effect on the global sulfur cycle. The burning of coal, natural gas, and other fossil fuels has greatly increased the amount of sulfur in the atmosphere, and ocean and depleted the sedimentary rock sink also. So without the human impact, sulfur would stay tied up in the rocks for millions of years until it was uplifted through the tectonic events like earthquakes and all, and then released through erosion and weathering processes, which will take a long time. But the human activities have greatly increased the flux of sulfur to the atmosphere, some of which is transported globally. And the result is that there is on these processes is to increase the pool of oxidized sulfur, that is sulfate, into the global cycle at the expense of storage of reduced sulfur in the Earth's crust. Therefore, human activities do not cause a major change in the global pools of sulfur, but they do produce massive changes in the annual flux of sulfur through the atmosphere. When sulfur dioxide is emitted as air pollutant, it forms sulfuric acid through reaction with water in the atmosphere. Once the acid is completely dissociated in water, the pH can drop to 4.3 or lower, causing damage to both man-made and natural ecosystems. And according to EPA, the acid rain is a broad term referring to a mixture of wet and dry deposition from the atmosphere containing higher than normal amounts of nitric and sulfuric acids. Distilled water is a water without any dissolved constituents, contains no carbon dioxide, and has a neutral pH of 7. Rain naturally has a slightly acidic pH of 5.6 because carbon dioxide and water in the air react together to form carbonic acid, a very weak acid. But when we mix sulfuric acid also to that um, sulfur dioxide to that composition, and it makes the rainwater more acidic than the normal composition. But it is important nutrient for plants also. So sulfur is increasingly used as a component of fertilizers, which goes back to the atmosphere and causes so many problems. Now, this is all from me today. Thank you.